Welcome to the Bonsai Town Podcast, the tree hugger's #1 spot for history, horticulture, and having fun. This is your host, Kevin, and in today's episode, I interview Rodney and Charlie Clemons. I was able to visit their bonsai nursery in summer 2023. In this episode, you will hear about their journey as a married couple working within bonsai and on bonsai together, and many other things. Please note, this conversation was cut short due to a storm that rolled through as we were recording outside. I would also like to take a moment and say thank you to my good friend Dave Cutchin for making this possible. I also would like to say thank you to you, the listeners, for your continued support. Now let's get to the interview. So thank you for having me over. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
I think
it's been a blast.
Thank Dave for vouching for me. Some guy who's from Oregon originally, but living in Ohio at the moment, right?
Well, if you've been vetted by David, then hey, you're good here.
I appreciate that. No, I really do. Today's been a dream come true for me because I've been hearing about y'all for a while, and the magic of Rodney with Boxwoods and everything else, and then yourself too. I'm practicing alongside him. It's like, I hope to someday meet these people. And Dave's like, "You want to meet Rodney and Charlie?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll make it happen. Don't worry about it." I was like,
"That's great.
Right, you want to do a podcast with them?" What? He's like, "Oh yeah, I'll work that in too." I was like, "Okay, don't put pressure." He's like, No, that's okay.
No pressure.
I was like, "Thank you." We're recording, just to let you know. So for everybody listening, we're talking to Rodney Clemons and Charlie Clemons. Where are we located? Where are we at?
Stone Mountain, Georgia.
Okay. How long have you all been on this property? When did you guys first get here?
About 28 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Moved here during the Olympics in 96, so 27,
okay.
I guess.
That's
how I remember.
Where were we all before that?
We both had our own homes.
Okay.
I had one in Candler Park, and he was in Tucker. And we had enough sense to realize that they would always remain his home, my home. We needed our home.
In reality, she didn't want my 6-foot steer horns in her house. Little bungalow.
With all the trees and everything, too.
And here, everybody is blown away. Oh my God, this place, blah, blah. And I tell everybody, my second biggest blessing is where I live. Rodney's the first.
Sometimes.
So you both all been practicing bonsai at the same time, or you been practicing before?
I saw bonsai when I was 13, and I really got involved when I saw a better tree when I was 17, and I'm 70 now, so it's been a minute. And
stroll through the park.
Yeah.
Was that here in
Atlanta?
Yeah,
it was.
Yes, it's my first time to Atlanta.
First
time to the south originally.
Yeah.
So it's not as humid as I've been hearing as it normally gets. So
I know. Well, everybody talks about it, but gosh, we call it getting hot here when it's 100 degrees and 100% humidity.
That would be
little thunderstorms under each arm. It's
And as Rodney says, if we had this kind of weather all year long, you couldn't stir the people with a stick. We'd be like the coast of California.
Right.
Because the weather would be so conducive, and this way the heat is a deterrent.
The beauty is in Atlanta, everybody thinks of us as deep south, sort of. But
guilty,
Yeah,
guilty,
but you got to understand, our airport's the second or third highest in the country. We're at 1,000 feet here, and it helps with the plants.
With the airport too, I looked it up. It's the largest in the country.
Yeah,
I was like, oh wow, I didn't realize it was so big.
But you can move around it. I'm used to it as it grew, but still, it's an easy airport for me.
I figured Dave was like, if you have to take a tram to another area, your airport is huge. I'm like, that's a very good point. A very good point. Because I'm used to PDX. They're like John Glenn and Columbus, where it's literally here and you're there.
Which concourse did you come in on?
I was on N. So
you flew Southwestern, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was. I was like, I'm just gonna walk the whole way. And I was like, this is a long walk to the baggage claim. And by the time I got there, it was it? All the bags were starting to get pulled off by the attendants to take the bags, so they thought we didn't come. and get them. And I was like, "Ma'am, that's my bag." She's like, "Well, you're gonna grab it or what?" I was like, "Thank you, ma'am." She's like, "Have a good day."
Yeah.
All right, I'm in the South.
They should have ID'd you.
No, so when you came to this property, you had all your trees with you, or you had them other places?
Well, actually, Charlie had her trees at her house, and I had my trees in Tucker. And Tucker is probably 10 miles away.
Okay.
And it was a major change in climate from there to here. The microclimates were totally different. And plus, I was heavy into pines. And when we got here, within a year, we started seeing a rapid decline of the pines. And they all got pine borers and it's too late when it took place.
And I want to digress for 1 minute.
Yeah.
Rodney got me into bonsai.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We were good friends. And he was married to somebody else, as was I. So we used to socialize as couples and do things that way. And my husband decided that, it was too much responsibility when we bought a house. And off he went. And Rodney and I both were similar in so many ways. And one of them, we had a truck. A friend said, "Help us move." Rodney goes, "Man, how you doing since Tom moved out and stuff?" And I said, "Well, I'm painting houses with a crew of women." And he's like, No. You need to go to work for David Cook at the Garden Source then. And I was like, I didn't even know how to say bonsai. Knew nothing.
We don't mind correcting people, though.
He called up, got me the job, and it was like being paid to go to school.
Okay.
And I ended up managing the nursery, and I've kidded him the whole time of that he just did that so I would be trained.
Not a bad ploy.
Yeah. It shouldn't have been so obvious, I guess. But
right. It's like, it's good for you.
Yeah.
Well, and earlier we talked today, you said you were really into biology, right, Charlie?
Well, I was.
You was? Okay.
I didn't get my degree or anything.
Right. But did that liking of biology help you want to be in it more?
I did landscaping, and I had a greenhouse. I was a plant person. So this was an easy transition from plants. And once I found bonsai, I felt like I'd finally found the form of horticulture I could grow old with, that I could manage little trees.
Yeah.
Which, I didn't realize when I got together with Rodney.
It came with me.
Big trees, big trees.
Yeah, you're looking at the bonsai press. I was like, that is huge. That's almost taller than me. It's it's not often you hear a couple doing bonsai together, right? What has been the biggest thing that's kept you all easy on your own things? You guys have your own trees, right?
Yours, mine, and ours.
Okay. Yeah.
Who makes the call for? We don't need to get another tree right now. We gotta pay some food.
It's not an issue of food. It's about the work.
Okay.
And I'm usually the one, like right now, I'm saying I want the trees to go away direction, not towards us. We have so many trees that I feel like we can't take adequate care that we would like to. So Rodney talks to his students and to people all the time about cutting down the collection, honing the collection, that it's a good thing to do. And we're trying to implement that thought as well here.
Right.
How do you make the call of which one stays and which one goes? I've been working to that myself, and other people ask me all the time.
Well, it's several different reasons. One is it's an old favorite, so I've got trees that I've worked on for 50 years, and it's hard to let go of those.
Right.
And then we have a group of trees that have provenance in the sense that they were given to us from friends that are no longer with us. So that's how we kind of remember the person. And then myself, I'm just speaking for myself, I like to keep trees that I'm excited about that I still haven't played with. Yeah. And so I'm going to have the fun, then pass it on. What's your reason, Charlie?
So many different reasons. The health of the tree. If I feel like our environment's not good for that particular species anymore, because environments change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can see the results in the trees, the landscape trees as well as the bonsai. So there's a lot of criteria that for either one of us. And it depends on where it's going, how it's going. If somebody wants to purchase one of our trees that we really care about, both the person and the tree, then we might be inclined to let some go. That normally we might not. But it's very important for us for the trees to receive love and care. Yeah. We don't want to foster them out for a sure death. So we get a reputation that we don't sell trees.
It's hard to pry them away from us. But a lot of that is we're both, but Charlie really taught me how to really live within your means. Mm-hmm. And I think with anybody that has bonsai, that's very, very important to do that. So we really don't have to support ourselves through our trees. So it makes it a lot easier. Right. We can vet people and the trees and make sure they're going to a good home. It's like passing a puppy along or something like that. You want it to go to a good place. And
and that's the thing too is, talking. You have new people, students coming in, right?
Right.
I'm sure they want to buy the most prettiest tree in your lot, but you're like, no, let's hold back. Like, you can come work on it. Get your proficiency up, right?
We do. One thing that we like doing or do is when a student comes here and they express a lot of interest in a certain tree, we'll put their name in our heads that this could happen, and so you've got to have plan B, plan C, and all that to back up with. When you have so many trees you're taking care of, if something happens, there's got to be a place they're going. So we're preparing for that. So it's a good thing because you can kind of judge the student, or not judge them, but you can tell what their interest, how to teach them by the trees that they're responding to.
Right. When you're curating your own collection too all the time, right? In
right.
that regard too, you both have done curation for private collections in the past, or now, or still ongoing?
I've not ever curated a private collection. I had a brief stint, very brief, when I worked and managed the bonsai section at the monastery, and that precipitated Rodney's full-on involvement. They were really wanting Rodney, but he was employed full-time with Rice and Clemons. And so I played around out there for a while, and then Rodney became the curator of the collection there. And early on, I was asked to speak at a Florida convention, and again, I managed a nursery, so I had my own following of people that liked and responded to me. But when it came down to, would you like to speak at this conference that Rodney's speaking at, it hit me that we only needed one speaker. And thankfully, we went that direction, because what we've created here is not conducive for both of us being gone.
Mm. We consider ourselves dairy farmers, where no matter what day it is, I don't care how you feel, you got to get out there and milk the cows or water the plants or check them out,
Right.
And so it's a constant. Charlie does have her students and stuff, so she's still involved from that side. And as far as a curator goes, I'm going to say she's right here doing this. There have been many times where when we moved here and I was working very, very hard, I took a time off from bonsai, really a year, pretty much.
For a year, he didn't touch them, water them, prune them, spray them.
I couldn't handle
look at them, because his commute was so much longer to get to work, and everything was so completely overwhelming with the new environment and trying to work the landscape here for what we needed and wanted, and getting everything indoctrinated bonsai-wise to the new environment. But I took that as the highest compliment, that Rodney had never been able to step away from his trees, and that he felt very comfortable and assured that he knew they were in good hands. So that spoke volumes for me.
Yeah.
And the fact that he could travel. That there was, when he first went into bonsai full time, he traveled a lot. A lot.
Well, so I had made in early 80s, mid 80s, I was asked to speak at a Florida Bonsai convention, and that was my first well-paid gig. Now, it was the first one that kind of put me on the map. I'd done many other talks and stuff like that, but that was a bigger deal to me, and so it at that time I was committed. I told myself only do 4 a year, and that kept it within reason. It still became pretty much a vacation and stuff, but it kept me under my own control, which sometimes I have to do, believe it or not. But you know what? Once I retired from Rice and Clemons, and Charlie says I opened the door for. She said I was rehired, that I didn't retire, but so a lot of people came out of the woodwork and wanted, and I couldn't say no.
Right.
Charlie could, but I couldn't.
Well, I taught him. He's very good at it now.
She carries a big stick.
No is a complete sentence, right?
But I was very understanding and lenient for years and years of letting you travel and do, and I stayed home and took care of it all.
Yeah, and I learned that when you have a paper calendar and you say, I'm not traveling that much, and Charlie pulled out my calendar and counted the days for me, and it's like, woo, you know, busted.
I'm a yes man now.
And the one that impacts, I know that because of what we've created here and the responsibilities, not just with the bonsai, but this property, everything about it, as I mentioned, we don't get to go away together. We've not been away for one night since 2004.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
So we are dedicated and committed to our trees. And when we used to try to travel and do, we'd always sustain some loss, even if we had a house sitter and a paid person to water and stuff. And it got to the point where it wasn't worth the risk anymore.
Right. Plus, the collection you have is, some of those trees are one in a million, right?
Yeah.
Well, and who in their right mind wants to come and do all the hand watering that we do?
Right. Well, that's the thing with hand watering. It's almost like conducting a choir, right? Because it is more.
It's a great way of putting it, because that's the only way you can read your trees. When you hand water, you're looking at them, you're understanding, seeing how much water they drink, their health. So it's important.
It's like massage, having a conversation with the body. Watering is having your conversation with the bonsai.
100%. Yeah. I'm really interested to hear how you've come to this conclusion to where you're going through your management of the nursery. You come here full time. You're semi-retired from your landscape duties to miniature duties, right?
Right.
How did that do for you mentally, as far as mental health and things? I mean, I know that word's a hot word right now, but it seems to me if you had to take a year off, there might have been things there,
Well, there was. It was pretty hard to admit, but there was a lot of stress from both the move, all the decisions that had to be made, and our business. That landscaping business was taking off. So it just wasn't the time for it. And I just, sometimes you just hit bottom, and just for self-preservation, I had to back out of something that obviously I've loved. But I've watched people, you get into bonsai when you're young, and you go to college, you get married, you have kids, and then as you age, you got some time and some money, and that's when a lot of people get into bonsai wholeheartedly. And I started when I was 17, took 1 year off. I feel pretty good about it.
That's great.
Yeah.
And we laid the groundwork together because we knew that the rehirement plan was going to be bonsai. Yeah. We just didn't know it was going to happen when it did. Yeah. So we had laid the groundwork. We used to do a lot of buyouts and my goodness, how many times did we use our home equity line to make purchases that would be crazy not to do? So we forged ahead for something that we knew was our future. Yeah. We just didn't know when that was going to transpire. So we were very blessed that we had our groundwork laid. We had pots, we had tools, soil, stock. Yeah. We had
everything was already paid for. And
we'd amassed quite a bit to be prepared for this, so it was a pretty easy transition, and one that, quite frankly, Rodney became this happy person that he couldn't express with the other business. It was like he could follow his passion as opposed to the money trail. Yeah,
you were playing.
Yeah, it was. And, it's like it changed everything all at once through several things. But, I looked at the trees that I haven't been able to figure out. I just walked out there and went, whoa. And so it just changed the art from, I guess, lack of stress or just totally enjoying it. And
it was astounding. I mean, trees that he'd been looking at daily for how many, years upon years. And it was like the epiphany with the trees. He could see them. Their veil had been lifted. And the art that was coming out was astounding.
Well, we had talked earlier about, trees and the lines and everything. And I'll change the way I put this, but, you don't want to mess a tree up. So you want to get to know it. And I felt like a lot of these trees I've been keeping, you've both been keeping very happy and healthy and everything, but we didn't mess them up. We waited until the inspiration came and we could see what the tree was. And that's really a smart way to do bonsai. My teacher, E. Felton Jones, judged his students, by how they did their trees, in the sense where he always wanted you to bring the trees to him. And what he was doing is looking at your tree, and in the sense he was wanting to see if once you started the process of the life of bonsai with that tree, did you start and just continue with that move, or did you keep reinventing the wheel? And so you have a tree that's a very nice trunk with scars all up and down it, and it'll never be a bonsai. It's always going to be a work in progress.
Right.
And so the main thing is see the line and develop the age. And
listen to the tree.
Yeah.
You're good at, I hope both of us, at listening to what the tree wants to be as opposed to what you perceive it should be.
Yeah.
Let it tell its story.
Do I do the same thing with people?
Maybe the one that don't talk.
This one's about trees.
How do you feel like you can teach that to your students in regards to, like, I know it doesn't happen fast, but some people want it now, right?
Yeah. A short bamboo stick works the best, I found.
Do better.
Well, it's something you've got to tell the person when, everybody, when they start in bonsai, what they're going for is seeing the tree in the bonsai and working the tree out. And in reality, bonsai is so much horticulture. It's really about taking care of the tree and bringing it out that way. So I try to explain that basically with somebody, you've really got to just be comfortable with the tree, keep it alive, make it healthy, And everybody wants to see the tree in it, but learn to let the tree tell you what it is.
What are your thoughts?
My mind was dancing all over of all the different trees and where they came from, and, the ones that you've collected and the ones, as Rodney said, from people. And
they've all got stories.
That's the one thing. Each tree out there has a story. And we could spend all day long walking through telling all the stories, which would, I'm sure, bore someone to death, but that's how extensive the stories are, that they're very heartfelt from us, and some of it makes it harder. Like a good example, the winged elm that's in the Pacific Bonsai Museum. That one was very hard to let go of because that was our Von Banning tree. Oh. It's one that he had worked on.
I think I've seen that one because they had it on his display when they showed his work, right? Yeah. That was breathtaking.
And Rodney had taken it to the Nationals, and he called up and said, they want the elm. And it was a heart stopper. It was like, can I say, okay, give the tree up? But as we age, one thing that has become eminently clear is that they are a legacy. Yeah. And that they need to have a place to go. And this felt so appropriate that it allowed part of our memories and love of Vaughn to be translated to the world of bonsai, but it was more the legacy of the time we'd put into it. It stated a lot about the Vaughn part of the tree, but he didn't work on it near the amount of time that it was with us.
So it had really matured.
Yeah.
And but I tell you, with that, sometimes it's really good to let things go and have a new set of eyes put on it. Right. And what they've done out there with that tree is fantastic.
Yeah, Aaron Packard. Is I want to know where he gets his inspiration from.
It sounds like another podcast.
Right, I know. Hey, Aaron, come on over. Yeah, I mean, to circle back real quick, the monastery.
Right.
I've heard about this in and out. I've been doing this full-time lifestyle choice. My wife calls me an addict in a good way, since like 2016, right?
Enthusiast.
Yes. Yep. Kinder, a little nicer. What is the monastery?
Well, the monastery...
It's what was the monastery.
Well, as far as bonsai goes, do you want me to say this, or you want to talk about it? Okay. Well, the monastery is a Trappist monastery, and so they're supposed to really pave their own way. And all their buildings, most of them, been built by the monks. And it's a dying thing in the sense where they probably had 100 people there at one point, monks, and now there's 28, something like that. And a lot of them are very old.
Very old.
And so bonsai became sort of like they made bread, they raised emus, they had gardens, they've done a lot
cows.
They've done a lot of fire trucks. They did so they've been there since the 40s. They're on 2,000 acres. And so one of the monks was a very interesting guy, very bohemian type person that was very well connected and around Margie Post, people like that. They were friends. And so Father Paul started bonsai there. And as far as I go, he, at an early age when I was a teenager and everything and living a little bit outside reality, he was fine with me. Not everybody was. And so his tree, the Kingsville, was the first tree that I sort of got. It reminded me of a live oak. And he was very good with it. So they had this little bonsai shop. He grew things in the ground, raised beds, and was very giving. That's why Atlanta has so many Kingsvilles is from him, and they do well here. But one of his apprentices, Francis Michael, he really brought it to a different level. He became a businessman, which he ended up not liking that side of himself. But the monastery became, wholesale-wise, it became one of the largest importers of tools, pots, and soil during their day. And so they did that. They had they ended up with another shop they built.
They shipped all over the country.
Yeah,
everybody
great shipping.
This was in the.
Well, you're starting out in the bonsai there started in probably early 60s.
Okay.
And went through with we're talking about now we're probably up to 2005 or 6.
Oh, okay.
And then it started kind of slowing down. And but they
changed focus.
Yeah, their collection was the trees that they had worked on for a while were put on display, and they created a garden that sort of like part of their museum, and so that was there for a while, but kind of COVID changed everything because a lot of these guys were very old and they got scared, and so things got shut down.
Now, a word from our sponsor.
Today's episode is sponsored by Tori Solis, ceramic artist of Blue Nose Trading and host of the Bonsai podcast. You can find all of Tori's current ceramic available work at bluenosetrading.com. You can find her also on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and almost every other social media ever made at Blue Nose Trading. As a final note, she has asked us to remind you all to drink plenty of water today. This episode is brought to you by the Columbus Bonsai Society. As with all local bonsai clubs, we are focused on providing education, outreach, and a local community to enjoy bonsai together in Central Ohio. Join us for our monthly meetings, annual wild, invasive, and native bonsai club digs, and our annual show, which this year takes place on July 20th through 21st at the Agriculture Administration Building of Chadwick Arboretum on the Ohio State University campus. Find more information and connect with us at columbusbonsai.org and on our YouTube channel, Facebook group, and Discord chat. Now, back to the Bonsai Time podcast.
Is that similar to your experience as you were in a curatorial position there as well?
It is, and one of the things that I think had the biggest impact was that when Father Paul passed away, that was the corner pin to bonsai at the monastery. It was the foundation, and even though Francis Michael took over and did a fabulous job, the level he took it to is, I remember clearly him saying to Rodney and I both one time, I did not come and join the monastery to be a businessman. So he pulled back. So it left no monks really participating. Yes.
That was not their...
More just babysitting them.
Yes. So it was, they were no longer producing trees themselves or taking care of them. And so they were looking for outside sources. Right. And I was one of the first ones that came in and started steering a different direction with it.
Did they seek you out, or did you get a call, or how did you?
They mentioned something, and I said, "What? I could work out here, you know." And so they came here to interview me. The business manager and the monk that was, in air quotes, in charge of the bonsai, they came out to interview me here, looked at our trees and collection and greenhouse, and decided that I would be a good fit. And I stayed and tried to get things going, but then the rehiring time for Rodney, it was a better fit for Rodney than it was for me, with the time, the energy, everything. So he could curate without having to work out there all the time, which was a requirement for me managing.
Right.
So we sort of changed gears and hands, and I stepped aside and Rodney became the curator and really then just maintained the collection.
Yeah.
He didn't have the commercial responsibility.
Right. Just tending to the trees.
Right. And then it went down from, probably just enough trees that could be on display plus one to, it went to that from about 30 trees, 35 trees at one point. And,
in the collection.
Yes.
They used to the collection when there were the flower shows or any big situation here that was horticulturally based. The monastery would cart out, this is how passionate they were, the van and loaded full of their bonsai and stands for them, and set up a beautiful display that really evoked a feeling with everybody. And I think they were exemplary for introducing bonsai to the Atlanta area that way.
They were a cornerstone here. Huge.
Yeah, I heard all about it, in this national show. I think it was the 2021 national show. As this year's, this year's national show. There were two they're monks or priests. They're Greek Orthodox. I made a mistake to say my brother was Roman Orthodox. They're like, I think they changed their body physicality real quick. I was like, I don't know the difference. I'm sorry, plain dumb.
There's a whole joke between the two of them too. There's, it's kind of interesting with the different approaches. They're same but similar, but not.
That's what I was told real quick. Like, we're not the same. But okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. I asked them, how did you get in the bonsai? We're thinking about, if you want to try it at our grounds where we do our stuff. I was like, do it, go, keep going. This idea of how do we pass it on. My mom's first and second grade teacher. As you've heard me say, my wife Kumi is Japanese. Well, my mom has us do Japan days for her kids to learn more about the world as opposed to a small area in Oregon.
Yeah.
So I show my trees, and to this day, the kids that I've even passed on to like higher grades are now older, or the blended class she's in where the second graders are now becoming second graders are going to talk to the first graders, or vice versa. And just the other day, my mom called me up and said, I forgot to tell you, the kids saw a bonsai tree on a little video we were watching. Miss Ferris, it's a bonsai tree. And so she had to stop and rewind it so the kids could see it.
Oh, that's great.
And do you think there's an availability for kids to attach more connection to it because it's their size? And that way they may want to be involved in it more later on?
Well, before you start on what I know you are, there was the idea of the Japan Day, or the different ones happened at several schools around here. And I know I traveled up with a girlfriend of mine who did bonsai, and we spoke at one of the schools and carried trees and did the whole talk, and this, through all the different classes. And we were told how many of the ones grabbed hold of the passion, the spark, and actually tried to do something. But young people in bonsai, with anything, you want young people there to carry on the torch. Rodney also curates a collection at the Smith Gilbert Gardens.
Which is owned by the city of Kennesaw, an hour north of here.
Okay.
And one of the great things there is once a month he has a volunteer study group where the people actually work on the trees under his supervision. And
What? Well,
Kids.
Yeah. Well, in the study group, there was a young lady that started when she was 8 and almost instantly got it. And now she's going to college, and she still comes back every so often when she has the time. But watching her go from 8 years old to being a teenager, and her passion never wavered. And it was just really fun watching. A few years ago, right at COVID, we had a mother that was running a at-home schooled class, and the kids get to vote on what they want to do as far as an elective, I guess, and they actually have to make the money to afford whatever they're going to do. And so they picked bonsai, and we got vetted by a couple kids that came down here and wanted to talk bonsai and see how they would fit in and everything. And so I was explaining everything, getting into each tree, talking about it my normal way. And I noticed I'd lost one of the girls. And so the mother was there, Charlie was there, one of the little girls. And so I was looking around, and here's this little girl laying on the gravel out there, looking up at a tree. And
just underneath the skirt kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I go over there and I go, how's it going? What are you doing? And she goes, I'm just looking at your tree. So I lay down with her, and so I'm looking up, and she goes, that area is a little heavy, don't you think? And I was like, yeah. Yeah. So,
tell me what you really think.
Yeah. So, it's like the tree I worked out at Mirai.
Yeah.
You won't believe how many times I got down low and looked at that canopy. It tells you a lot.
Yeah.
So, they did accept us, and they came here and took a class before COVID got here, and it was just learning through a kid's eyes is just really, really fun and intense. So,
And it was a shame. They had one class, one opportunity. It was a losing proposition if we're talking money for us with this. It was about being a service for the community.
Yeah.
So we had picked out nice Kingsvilles for the kids to work on, and a tool, and
which I sharpened.
Everybody's name on them. So they got started and had a blast that first time, finding the roots and doing this, and then boom, it was all over because of COVID.
Right.
And so it was never revisited with that class, but the potential watching them,
it was so much fun.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the mothers, she came and worked on a bonsai, and her mother came and worked on a bonsai. So it was pretty funny. But at the Smith Gilbert, one day I was curating, and a class came through of young children that probably 7, 8 years old. And so they're talking. So, I'm going to do my normal thing of showing them 2 trees, one a young tree, one an older tree. And so I said, going to the young tree first, I said, this tree is 25 years old. And they were, wow, they all did it. It was like, there's no way I'm going to tell them how old the other tree is. It was like, well, that whole thing got blown.
But the kids' perspective, it is seeing the trees through new eyes. When I was doing one of the talks at the school, I was showing examples, and I held up a lovely little procumbence on a stone. Looked at it every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Holding it up, and one kid goes, wow, look at that rock. It's a turtle. And all the kids go, yeah, I'd never seen the turtle. And it was so
obvious.
obvious.
Yeah, it was obvious.
When I came home and held it up to Rodney, I said, what do you see? And he's like, the juniper. And I said, turtle? And he was like, oh my God.
Yep.
So
we have a turtle now. Yeah, I remember the first time we did it, Kumi and I were still living in Oregon. And first time at my mom's new school on the base of Mount Hood. And it was a rowdy day. We taught him to use chopsticks, all the things. We gave him some little candies and stuff. My mother-in-law shipped them over special in the handmade origami and everything for all the kids.
Wow.
It was great. when we got to the trees, I was like, hey, y'all, you gotta listen and be attentive and be respectful. Because the trees and myself, we both have feelings, right? Like, yeah, okay. Like, shh, everyone's like, shh, guys, quiet, okay. When it was all said and done, my mom said, that is the quietest and most respectful I've ever seen my class. And she said, and those kids have siblings now. And some of them are entering high school. She said, some of them still come back to me and said, I really appreciate you, man. The trees were so cool. Because I told them, trees are your friends. Do you hug your friends? Do you love your friends? Like, yeah. Well, your trees are your friends too.
Yeah, you got to treat them like that.
Do you ever touch trees? Yeah, we touch them all the time. Like, remember to touch them softly because they have feelings too. But you can hug them too. Say,
that's great.
Like, I'm going to do that when I get home. I do it all the time. I was like, oh, great. Yeah, great, guys. Now I'm just trying to figure out how to have that same enthusiasm because, as I told you all earlier too, my co-host Ryan and I, we started the first ever Bonsai Club at The Ohio State University. We're trying to get students in that age range, but also that idea. Why is it important? Because they're adults there, but they also have everything else going on. And some of them live in dorms. Some really want it, but it's how do we break that mold? I'm trying to figure out how I guide the dance, the educational component. Like have you branched into that of like, how do you guide your dance to educate people that maybe wanting to do it but not fully committed?
Well, I think there are different ways to do it, of course, and
or what's worked best.
Well, in different classes of people, and I mean, some kids are a lot more mature than some of the adults I deal with, including myself. But, kind of right then I lost my train of thought. Welcome to Rodney's world. Go ahead, Charlie.
Well, I was going to say that I think it's very rare that somebody at 17, like Rodney was, when he became immersed in bonsai. Mm-hmm. Most people at that age, they don't know where they're going, what they're doing. They're still defining themselves. Mm-hmm. So I think it's hard for them to embrace something that requires the commitment and time that it does, and like what you brought up, the environment, and to be able to commit to it. Like Rodney said, dairy farmer. Most young people are so busy exploring life that they have a hard time thinking of taking care of a tree. It's hard enough for them to think about a dog, a pet. Right? And as we've stated, there's that similarity of care and commitment that when they're older and have a chance to define themselves, then I think horticulture comes easier then for them.
So, bonsai, how do you attract people to bonsai? There's many ways, and at the college level, or right after that, you have one example. I used to, especially before I got reined in a little bit, I used to love giving talks to master gardener programs, garden clubs and everything, because you're dealing with somebody that's obviously into plants, but master gardeners, they're plant people, but those talks and conventions and all that are social. And so they're out in the audience, they're talking among each other and everything. And so one time I just came up with a sentence that has stuck with me forever. And it's bonsai is the pinnacle of all horticulture. And every one of those people turned and looked at me. Then I had to prove it, but it's easy to prove because you've got to know so much about that plant, from light, from amount of water, from pH, what it's going to grow into, what it looks like when it's an old tree, just what fertilizers, pruning techniques, when to prune. All that stuff can get correlated into any other landscaping or horticultural job or vocation. Mm-hmm. And so bonsai, to do bonsai and do it correctly, is horticulture. The art comes maybe later, or maybe it's not important, but a live, healthy tree's the most important thing. And then I end it with, and we do it all in a little bitty pot. And so you get people's attention with bonsai, and every person's going to be a little different. What hooks them in. I've noticed some people are into the tree. Some people are in just one type of tree. If you enjoy a Japanese maple, why not do a Japanese maple bonsai? You're already halfway there.
Right.
Somebody that really loves ceramics. I mean, the world's wide open. And, and so especially now, we're getting away from a lot of the traditional approaches to ceramics for bonsai, and sort of like the more artful, playful side is coming out. So there's that.
Speaking of that real quick, how's that affected your guys' fluidity in your own work with this change from traditional to whatever we have now? Has that affected you all in how you do certain trees certain ways, or do you just kind of go with the flow of the river?
I remember when Ryan Neal came here, Rodney was concerned at his comment because he was having a hard time.
Well, let me say something before you finish. One of the hardest things about having something you're passionate about is getting people to talk to you about it. I mean, you're coming here to look at bonsai. Tell me if you like it, if you don't like it. And so when Ryan came, that was the first thing I said. I don't care how this affects you. It's going to affect you one way or another. Tell me. Go ahead, Charlie.
Oh, his comment to Rodney
at the very end
was that he could see that Rodney had his own distinct style, and that Rodney was pondering, is that a compliment? Is it a judgment? What does this really mean? And then, we pondered and said it was definitely a compliment. And the only thing is, tried to let him know and understand, but it wasn't till he was in a car leaving to go speak for the Atlanta club that the person with him said, "You do realize that Charlie does bonsai too, and that, a lot of the trees were hers and things," and it had gone right over his head. He was giving, all the trees were Rodney, the whole nurseries was Rodney, everything was Rodney. And I didn't miss a beat because I didn't realize it. And I wasn't about to try to, but it was funny. He made a point at the meeting to apologize and say, "I'm sorry, I didn't realize,
Yeah. That's interesting. In regards to that, I mad respect for Ryan to, correct himself too, right?
Right.
And within that idea of paying respect and saying, "Hey, we take it back," and say, "You both have your own style." How did that affect you? Like, oh, do I push more in this way for your own style, or do I adapt it? You're both together, or have you? I guess a question I've been on my mind: have you ever both worked on a tree to make one unified thing?
Well, you saw the ball cypress forest, that big forest.
Yeah.
Rodney and I put that together, and it took us all day long.
No, it took a lot longer than that because those trees were collected over a 10.
I mean, when we put it together.
That was part of it, because that's thing. Yeah, but Charlie is right. When we actually got out there and put it together, it was a give and take on what do you think, what do I think.
Yeah.
Let's look at it this way. And all these trees out there have both our hands on them. I mean, there's not one tree out there we haven't both touched. And so we're very similar in several approaches, but I think the biggest deal is we'll both listen to each other during this.
Yeah.
And Vaughn coined something that was evident, and the creations exhibit that well. He said, "Rodney, you like tension in your trees." And we had never thought of it in those terms, where Rodney liked a little chaos and tension. I tended to want more calm feel as opposed to the tension. Rodney likes it to look and feel like the wind is blowing through and seeing cause and effect more.
So as a kid, I grew up in the Panhandle on the coast, and
so
that's
you're
what
in
I
all
saw.
those farms, yeah.
But it's back to one statement you made on how this new view on bonsai is going, and how it affected me. It fit into my wheelhouse. I loved it. It's become a great thing for bonsai, and American bonsai especially, because we don't have the same traditions that the rest of the world. I mean, I feel like in America we lag behind, of course Asia, but Europe, and there's a lot of people in South America and Central America that were getting it, I think, before the masses, and our country got it, and now our strength is pulling all the people in that are able to collect all these trees from the wild here, the nice collected trees, and then you've got potters and ceramicists that are coming in doing avant-garde containers, and the correlation that putting the two together has been a strength. I think in the last it's taken place over the 50 years I've been doing bonsai, where it's gotten a lot better. A joke, which isn't too much of a joke, is when I got started, as long as it was in a bonsai pot, it was a bonsai. Now it's a piece of art, and so it can be very interesting, and as long as the art's there and it pulls it off as a piece of art and it's healthy, it's fantastic.
Do you think there should be a term for that? If it's in a pot and makes it a bonsai, because a lot of people do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guilty. I think we're all guilty. Right? It's like, oh, it's in there. It's a thing, right? I did a thing. Should there be a coined term for that? That's not bonsai. I don't know. I think when you get coining terms, it can become too regimented, right? But what do we call it?
Well, I'll answer that this way myself. But we back to the monastery and some of the monks that were doing trees, and they asked me, what do you think of our bonsai? And I said, well, they're sort of like kanzai. And they said, oh, thank God they're not malzai. But I was going, ooh, I think I keep it the way it was. Yeah. Not what I meant, but anyway, there's, it's basically refinement, I think, is the big word. You can put a cutting in a bonsai pot, but basically when you get that tree looking like an old tree, a refined tree, that's what bonsai to me is, where the passion comes out. Yeah. And that takes sometimes years. So bonsai for a lot of people, not just the simple tree in a pot, but sometimes the passion's there on just creating the piece, and then the passion moves on. And, when here, the creating the piece is stimulation. It's a lot of fun, but then the work starts, taking care of it for years and years and years, and watching the tree evolve, watching it change. But there's nothing like age on the trees. Not but,
and it's very refreshing to see that we as a country, what Ryan came back talking about, are embracing more of our own approach and style. It doesn't have to be, quote, traditional Japanese or Chinese anymore, that you've got a lot of latitude with things. One thing Rodney and I have embraced for years and years is American ceramics, potters, and have collected as many as we could of American potters, because
you do have quite a collection. It's beautiful.
But they're predominantly American potters. I mean, yes, there's I shouldn't say predominantly, but some of them that we don't really use, we have, but but we are passionate about American potters. Where for some people, if it's not in a traditional Japanese pot, it's not good.
Yeah. Right. And we discussed earlier, my wife drops a lot of amazing things on me just about cultural, because she is Japanese, right?
Right.
Yes.
And time and time again, I kind of sometimes beat my head against the rock, it feels like, because I'm trying to figure out this thing. She always comes back to, you're not Japanese.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, respect it, but you'll never fully comprehend it. She's like, hell, I don't even fully comprehend everything all the time. But it's just in that essence, I grew up in the culture. It's like we, try to explain something American. It's like, you just do it, right? It's like hot dogs and hamburgers on 4th of July. You just do it. Maybe a Budweiser. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, in America, we're a culture of all kinds of cultures in a melting pot situation. Right. So that kind of stuff is easy from somebody else's side, I think.
Well, I think that's the beautiful thing, too, is that we have so much more afforded availability to create this. I don't want to say create whatever we want, because you have to know where you've been to know where you're going, right?
Right.
And so to know even the traditional components, to have a starting point and then jump off.
Right.
As my wife always know the traditional, jump off from there.
Yeah.
But everyone always is trying to find their own personality in their own trees, right?
Yeah.
And complement their personality with their trees.
Sure. And that's where you, as Ryan Neal would say, once you develop your own style, that's where it needs to go, definitely.
We did a podcast with Michael Hagedorn when I was in Japan in December. He said one thing that's really stuck with me is that if you're going to do bonsai and you're going to show, don't be afraid of what people think about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. I always tell myself that, but then to have somebody just say it out loud.
Right.
I was like, thank you for saying that,
Well, you should be your own biggest critic. And after that...
Yeah, it's like
as any art form.
Yeah.
Self-gratification. You're really creating whatever it is for yourself, and if somebody else enjoys it, well, that's a boon and secondary, really.
And I think we might be getting some rain here shortly. What do y'all think?
I'm going to check it out.
Yeah. Guys, for real, one last question I'll ask before we end up going in.
This is going to be exciting.
Whoa!
Maybe we go in? Yeah.
Hard hat time.
Yep. All right. Well, Steve is asleep.
I see the hammock moving.
Yeah. Charlie, Rodney, thank you. We gotta cut this short, everybody. Branches are falling as we speak.
Yeah.
And
we got a storm coming in. It's right at us.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Whoa!
Yep. We're gonna go in. All right. Have fun, everyone. Stay safe. Oh, that's a branch.
Today's episode was recorded, edited, and produced by Ryan Houston, Kevin Ferris, and Kelly Louie. To find out more and see pictures relevant to today's topic or sponsors, see the show notes linked in the description or at bonsaitimepodcast.com. To submit questions, suggestions, or tree pictures for future discussion, find the contact form also on our website, or message us directly at bonsaitimepodcast@gmail.com. If you would like to support us in making more episodes, consider rating us, sharing with friends, donating, or becoming a sponsor. Our music was provided by Mini Cancer. To find more of their work, check out their SoundCloud and Bandcamp pages. To stay in touch with us, subscribe to us in your podcast app, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook at Bonsai Time Podcast, or on TikTok at Bonsai Time Pod. Also, Kevin and Kelly are at Kevin_FerrisPNW and Bonsai with Kelly, respectively, on Instagram. And Ryan is invivobonsai.com and on all social media. Remember, have fun and bonsai on.